Welcome to another video from explainingcomputers.com. This time it's a follow-up to my introduction to HTML, in which I'm going to explain the basics of CSS. This stands for Cascading Style Sheets and is used to format HTML pages. So let's go and get started. Right. In this video, we're going to be using a text editor and a web browser, and any text editor and web browser are just fine. In my last video, I wrote our HTML code in Notepad, but here I'll be using Notetab Lite, which is my favourite free multi-tab editor. As an alternative, you may want to use Notepad++, whilst over in Linux, you may perhaps opt for Genie, which is pre-installed in Raspberry Pi OS. Anyway, whatever multi-tab editor we choose, we can use it to have multiple HTML and CSS files open at the same time. And here I've got two simple HTML files open, one called index, one called links, and these are based very much on what I created in my last video. So basically here, the index file opens by declaring its doc type as HTML, opens up HTML, has a head section where here we declare the title of the page, we then open up the body of a document, and then if we go down, we've got a bit of content, we've got a heading, we've got a few paragraphs of text, and finally an image. This is basic HTML code. And these two files, index and links, are saved locally on this machine. They're saved in a folder called test.html. And if I click on, for example, index there, it'll open up a browser and we can see that page. And if I use Alt-Tab, I can go back to our editor over there and we could change something. This is a heading at the top, for example, like that. And if I did File and Save, well, I could use Control S, I'll do Save here. If I get our Alt-Tab back to the browser and I press Control R to refresh the page, you can see we've changed the content there. And throughout this video, we're going to be doing this, changing things in the editor and seeing the effect in the browser. So, what if we want to alter the font or other characteristics of a text on our HTML page? Well, let's go back to the editor where we could add code around each individual text element. But these days, best practice in styling text is to use either an internal or external style sheet. Let's start with the first of those to give you an example of an internal style sheet. This needs to be positioned within the head of our HTML document, so we'll go down to the head here, we'll go beneath title, and we'll open up our style sheet with a style like that, and we'll be closing it off down here with a end style like that as well. Next, we're going to be styling here all of the text that's contained within the paragraph tags of this HTML document. So if we just go down here to remind you what's going on, here we've got an opening paragraph tag, and here we've got a closing paragraph tag, if I can highlight it correctly over there. So what we're going to be doing initially is changing the style of all text contained within these opening and closing paragraph tags. So to do this, we'll go back to our internal style sheet up here, and we'll type the P for paragraph, and then a space, and we're going to open up a curly bracket, also known as a brace. And we're now going to set the font by entering font family like that, and a colon, and we can now enter our preferred font, which is going to be Arial, and this is the font the browser will use to render the text if Arial is available. However, not all fonts are installed on all computers in all operating systems, and so we need to also enter what's called one or more fallbacks. And so here I'll enter Helvetica like that, which is a pretty good alternative to Arial and available as I can remember in Linux. And then we also should finish off by entering a generic font family, something like serif or sans serif or monospace. So here I'll put sans serif as our generic family. I'll close off our brace, our curly bracket. I'll then go to File and Save. And if we Alt-Tab back to our web page, and we'll just get rid of the highlight, and I'll press Control R to refresh the page, and aha! We've changed the font of the text in our default paragraph elements. This says, as you can see, we've not changed the header. I'm sure as you can guess we can do that fairly easily. We'll go back to our editor, go back into our style sheet, we'll put another line in down here. Let's in fact just copy that line, make our lives easy, Control C, drop that in there. We're now going to make this header 2, so I'll make that an H2. We'll keep the same font family, but let's also be wild and change the color. So we'll now put in a semicolon because we're going to do something else. We'll put in color like that and a colon, and we can enter colors in all sorts of different ways. I'm going to use a keyword here. I'll enter red like that, and we'll do file and save, and we'll go back to the document and refresh. Oh look, the heading is now in red. And just to show you other ways of entering colors, let's go back to the document. We could use an RGB hex pair, so we get rid of our keyword and put in a hash and then an RGB value in hex. So we could, for example, if it wanted to be red, we would have a FF for red being at 256.0000 for no green and no blue. And if we save this, I'll Control S to save now. Back to the document and refresh. Red is still red, that obviously works, no issues at all. But just to prove it would be different if we change the value, let's make it blue. So we'll have a R and G on 0, and we'll have 256 for blue. Save that, back to the document, and if the world is with us, yes, the heading is now in blue. So, we've started to apply some text styles here on our index page, but what about our second page, our links page? We haven't done anything to this page yet. And what we could do is to go back to our editor over here, and we could take a copy of the internal style sheet on the index page, and we could put it onto a links page in the head under here like that, and this would work. However, it would not be an ideal solution, particularly on a large website, and this is where external style sheets are really very cool indeed. So what we're going to do is to create a new document. There we are, new document like that. And then we'll go back to our index page and we'll take the entries from our internal style sheet like that. We'll take a copy of those, Control C, and we'll go across to our new document and paste them in. Next, we'll save this document. I'm going to save it in the same location as our HTML files to make life easy, and we'll call it styles.css. This will be our external style sheet, and we'll save that. We've now got that set up. So we can go back to initially our index page, where I'm first of all going to get rid of the internal style sheet. That doesn't have to exist anymore, but I'm going to put a link in here to the external style sheet, which will be link relationship equals style sheet like that, and the href for link to the file will be styles CSS, which is the document we've just created. And I'm also going to take a copy of that link and put it into our links page, also in the head under there, or waiting for it like that. And if we save this page and we save the index page, we'll save to go back to our browser. And if we refresh the page, nothing has changed at all on the index page. But if we go to the links page, it now has the same styles applied to the CSS elements we have defined. And if you're thinking, why is it not applied them to the links here? If we go back to the code, you'll see the reason for that is that on the links page, those particular links, if we see them down here, are not inside paragraph elements. And we'll deal with this in the next part of the video. But what we can now do, I want to show you because it's really exciting, is to go to our style sheet, and we could change, for example, the color of the header to something like, I don't know, 008020 like that, and we'll save the style sheet, and then we'll go back to our document, refresh the page. It's now got a green header, as has the home page. And this is what's so cool about using an external style sheet, because you can define this one style sheet and its CSS elements can be applied to all of the different pages on your website. Now that we've seen the principle, let's move on to a more complicated external style sheet like this. Here at the top, as you can see, I've defined a style for the body of our HTML document with text aligned left. And because I've aligned the text left there, I've gone across to our index page and removed the center tags we had in the code. Back in the external style sheet, I've set a background color for the body of our HTML pages to be a light gray, and I've also added some padding. Padding refers to space added inside a CSS element, and you can, if you wish, define padding left, padding right, padding top, and padding bottom individually. However, it's quicker to use padding followed by full values, as I've done here, and if you do this, the full values refer to top, right, bottom, and left, respectively. Note that I've set padding as a percentage of the space available, but it could be set in other units such as pixels or ems. Talking of which, I've now also set a font size for our paragraph and H2 elements, which is currently set at 22 and 32 pixels. So let's make sure this style sheet is saved. I think it is. Let's go back to our document, and if we refresh the page to apply the new style sheet, we get, there we are, a web page that looks very different indeed. Back in our external style sheet, it's worth noting that while setting font sizes in pixels is operating system independent and highly accurate, it's sometimes frowned on in terms of accessibility. So alternatively, we could set the font size in ems with, by default, 1em being the browser's default font size. So here, for example, we could set the font size for the main paragraph element to be, say, 1.1 ems, just a little bit larger than the default in a browser. And we'll also set the heading size to be, I don't know, 1.5em, like that. We'll resave our style sheet, go back to the code, and if we reload, that's roughly the same. And we could mess around with values to get it exactly the same. Note that here we happen to be using header 2, H2, for our header, one of the 5 header values you can use in HTML from H1 to H5, H1 being the biggest. But here we've taken control of the size of H2 rather than using the default. Also note that in this style sheet I've added a few line returns to make things easier to see, and if you want you could also add some indents. So for example, I could go in here if I wanted to, put a tab in there and maybe go across to the next element and a new line and a tab like that, just to make things easier to look at. Personally, I don't tend to do that, but it'll make no difference to the code. It'll operate just the same way if you want to add in some indents and spacing to make it easier to read. Now, in the last segment of the video, I noted that the links on the links page were not styled, as they were not included within paragraph elements. And we could of course have fixed that just by putting paragraph elements around those links. But here I've done something a little bit more fancy. As you can see, down here I've defined a new link style called list. You can see there under a.list. Where, as you can see, I've defined the font family, I've defined the font size, the font weight, the text decoration, we'll come back to that, and also I've set the line height there just to space things out nicely on the screen. And yes, I've got my font sizes here in pixels, we've now got font sizes in ems at the top. That'll work, it's not ideal, but I'm sure the world will live with it. Also down here for a.list, I've defined the colour of a link when it's not visited, and below that I've defined another colour for when the link is visited. And then further down, very exciting, I've defined yet another colour for when we hover over the link, and I've changed the text decoration to underline. And to use this new list class in our links, I've gone to the links document, here we are, and I've added a class equal list in the front of the 2 links we had, and I've added in another link for good measure. So let's go back to the style sheet, make sure that is saved. I keep messing around with it. Let's go back to the pages, and if we click on our links page, there we are. We can see it come up with the new styling on the links. And the first 2 links here have been visited, that's why they're one colour. The SpaceX link hasn't been visited, that's why it's another colour. And if I actually hover over the link, you can see our underline comes on, colour changes. This is quite wacky, isn't it? That works very nicely indeed. And if we visit SpaceX, always good to visit SpaceX, see what's going on with the world of rockets and stuff like that. And if we come back, it now shows as a visited link. By altering the CSS for our new style, we can also create all kinds of effects. For example, we could go back here and under the hover thing, we could maybe get rid of our text decoration underline, but change the colours. We could change the colour of the text to be, for example, green, 00FF00 is bright green, and we could set the background to be, say, black, and that's going to be obviously 000000 RGB. We could save that, go back to our document, that's what it looks like now, but if we refresh, doesn't look any different till we hover. We've now got little blocks as we hover, which I think is quite a nice effect. That might be useful if you wanted to build something like a menu. And of course we've done this just by changing the external style sheet and not the HTML code for this page. So far, I've demonstrated various CSS code to style document fonts, colours and links. And hopefully there's been enough detail in my examples to allow you to experiment. However, there is more to CSS than this basic formatting, as we can also use it to control page layout. To do this, we need to create custom divisions or divs that allow us to position and format blocks of text. When doing this, obtaining exactly the results you want to achieve can get quite complex, and so I'm going to show you the basic principle using the simplest example I could think of. Specifically, down at the bottom of our external style sheet, I've created two custom divs called main and sidebar. As you can see, in the main div, I've set width to be 75%, and I've also added 5% padding on the right. And then in the sidebar div down below it, I've set width to be the remaining 20% of space available, and then I've used the command float right to position this div on the right of the screen. And then finally, I've also aligned the text in this div in the center for reasons which will become clear. Back in our index page, I've used these two new custom divisions to format the text. First of all, I've entered the code div class equals sidebar to open up our sidebar div. And then I've put in a list of links to actual or potential pages to create a menu, and then I've closed the div down there. And then I've opened up the second div class equal main, which contains all the content of the page. So after that, we can see basically all the page content just as we had it previously. And then after that, after the final element, which is our image, we've then got another closed div to close the main division. And I've done exactly the same on the links page. We have the sidebar there, and then we've got the main div, and we've got all the content of the page inside that. And as you might have noticed on both of these pages, I've added in a bit more content. So you ask, what does it actually do to our final pages? Well, let's go across and show you. This is what the pages now look like. It's very exciting, isn't it? We've got a page here with a little menu on the right of the screen. We can go to, say, the links page there. We can go back to the home page. We can't go to things like the cool stuff page because we haven't written this page, but hopefully you've got the principle. We've managed to achieve a page layout with content on the left and the menu on the right. This says there is one problem with this, which is on the index page where we've got an image. And if I scale this page using the plus and minus arrows, first of all, let's scale it up, you'll see things don't work terribly well. I have got a very large font here just to make things clear in video, but as you can see, that image has gone beyond the width of the page. And if we scale down, it doesn't really work terribly well relative to the scaling of the text. And the reason for that, if we look back at our code, is in the index HTML that we wrote in the last video, we've defined the width of the image element in pixels in absolute terms, and yet we've defined the width of our divisions in percentages. And there isn't a perfect answer to this. There are always compromises to make when you're working with CSS and HTML. It's not like designing things on paper, but one solution could be to set our width as a percentage. Let's set it to 100%, like that, and then save our page. Go back there and reload, and we'll now find that if we scale up and down, the image scales with its division, which is, I think, a better result. Right, just before I bring this video to a close, I thought we'd head towards a more standard page layout, and so I've added a couple of extra divisions. Firstly, as you can see, I've added a division that goes at the top of our page. I've called this banner, which features both some text and an image. And then, wait for it, at the base of the page, I've added a division called footer with some standard footer kind of links. And we've still got our main division with most of the content on the page. And across in our sidebar division, we've got our menu. To make all this work, first of all, I created an image. There we are, a picture of Mr. Scissors and a gradient to use in the banner. And then I went to the CSS and added in some extra definitions, as you would guess. First of all, one for the banner, which is quite a large definition, as you can see there. It sets a width, it sets a color for the text, it sets a height. We have to set a height if we wish to use a background image and have it work in our division. And then to use a background image I created, we have to tell the code the URL of where it is, and it's sitting there in our images directory. And then we also in the CSS indicate we're going to put the background image in the center of a division, and we're going to fill the whole division with it using background size cover. And then after that, we've got some font definitions as we've seen previously. For our footer division, that's similar to the stuff we've got before, nothing exciting to see here. And then finally, I've created a new link class called footer, as you can see, which provides the link class for the footer. And then, as you would guess, this is used in our code. We'll go across to index, where initially, after we've opened up body, we have div class equal banner, and we just have the word Mr. Scissors website. Everything else is taken care of via the CSS. We've then got our sidebar, as we've had previously. We've then got our main division. You're getting all this. And then right at the end, we've got our footer division with the footer links. And so there we are. We've got somewhere I think fairly reasonable in this CSS introduction. I've not taken you through everything you can learn about CSS in this one video, but hopefully I've given you enough to whet your appetite and to allow you to try some things out. As we've seen in this video, CSS can be very useful indeed because it allows you to reformat a great deal of HTML content by just changing one piece of CSS code. Clearly, there's a lot more to CSS than I'd managed to cover in this one short video, but nevertheless, I hope you found this introduction useful. But now that's it for another video. If you enjoyed what you've seen here, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And I hope to talk to you again very soon.